Hi, I'm Anwiti Singh and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about civilians arming themselves to fight off militants in Jammu and Kashmir. We also talk about how some medical students in Mumbai are ready to pay 10 lakh rupees fine instead of serving in rural areas. But first, we talk about the consequences of the hijab ban in Karnataka. Last year, the hijab controversy erupted in the state after 6 female students of a government pre-university college in Udupi claimed that they were not being allowed to attend classes while wearing the head covering.
So that was actually the foundation of, how the hijab issue started and how it snowballed. The girls, the Muslim girls, they felt, their religious rights are being taken away.
That's Sanath Prasad, who reports on Karnataka for the Indian Express. He says that this was the first trigger point for the protest that later took place in Udupi and in several other parts of the state, where other Muslim girls started wearing hijabs to colleges in solidarity with those 6 girls. And that is when the Bharatiya Janata Party-led state government took note of this.
Which is when they put an order on February which said that as per the Karnataka Education Act, the students of government colleges must adhere to uniforms, whereas the students of private PU colleges must adhere to the uniform prescribed by the College Development Committee. So this was what was challenged by the 6 girls from Udupi, the order saying that, this is actually interfering with our religious rights. And they went to the High Court, and then we know what happened in the High Court where, the Karnataka High Court upheld the government order and said that wearing hijab is not part of essential practice of Islam.
Later, the girls challenged this ruling in the Supreme Court, which ended up delivering a split verdict. A fresh appeal in the matter is yet to be heard by a larger bench. So Sanath says that as things stand right now, Muslim girls in the state are not allowed to wear a hijab in the classroom.
However, even if they are wearing a burqa or the hijab, they can come to the campus and then they'll be directed to a separate room where they can change and then sit without the hijab or the burqa in the classroom. So that's where we are right now. However, what distinction we do have is in certain private PU colleges where the CDC have their uniform rules, they have allowed hijab as part of the uniform. So this is where Muslim students, girls can wear hijab and sit in the class. And these private PU colleges are specifically, they are managed by Muslim trusts. So that's where we are today.
Now, the reason we were talking about this today is because this entire controversy has actually impacted the way Muslim students in the state have been enrolling in PUCs or pre-university colleges. The admission data accessed by Sanath reveals that enrollment of Muslim students in government PUCs has dropped by almost half compared to the previous year. In this segment, we talked to him about what the data reveals.
So, what we did was we found out that we had a one-liner which said that at the peak of hijab issue, the enrollment numbers in government PUC colleges increased, which was actually true. And when we accessed the last 5 years data, we found that in the aftermath of the hijab controversy, the numbers have decreased, the enrollment numbers. So although according to the official records from the Department of School Education Karnataka, in 2021-2022, so this was the time period when hijab was at its peak, right? So the number of Muslim girls who enrolled in government PUC colleges in Udupi is 178. But cut to this academic year, that's 22-23, it has dropped down to 91. That's almost more than 50%. And the same with the boys, where last year it was 210 and now it's dropped to 95. However, in private PUC colleges in Udupi, last year it was 328 Muslim girls who enrolled. And this year it's 487. So it's an increase. And the same with the boys. Last year it was 334 and now it's 440.
Okay, so Sanath, at a time when we are seeing enrollment in government PUCs go down, the enrollment in private PUCs is going up?
Is going up, yeah. So this goes on to say how, when I spoke to certain girls, they told me the government orders are threatening us because some of the government PU colleges the CDC, the College Development Committee members, the chairman of the committee member is the local MLA. And in this case, it's a BJP MLA, right? So, which they feel that they're threatened by the state indirectly, where their rules are threatening them, where their orders are snatching away their right to religion. So, hence, they finished their first PUC, after which they went on to their second PUC in different college. But that doesn't mean to say that they're out of the education system exactly, because certain girls have complied by the rules, but there's only this few girls who have actually shifted a course because of hijab, whereas certain girls have complied, saying that, okay, fine, education is what I want and education is what is important, and they have gone ahead. Although mentally they may not be okay, but because certain girls might still feel that, wearing hijab would make them comfortable, but then ultimately I have to compromise and get to class. So coming back to the enrollment numbers, so that's what we see. Not just in Udupi, even in other districts, say like Tumkur or Shivamogga for that example, there are isolated cases where the numbers have shifted from government to private, the Muslim girls' numbers. And mostly this is because of hijab.
And for the story, you also spoke to the administrators of many of these PUCs. What did they have to say about this change?
Let's talk about the private unaided ones, say the Saliyat, the Al Hisan, where girls have actually shifted. These colleges are where the Muslim girls at least get their education covered. They don't have to pay much because fall under the community and it's all taken care of, it's sponsored. But what they see is their enrollment numbers in this year has doubled. And it's like, the girls just want to get rid of the government institutions where they are being targeted. They're being used as a tool for political gains, and they want to get away with it and they want to come to these colleges. So here, the administrators in these government institutions feel that, they have welcomed them, of course, but then they're going on with their as usual education and all that.
And the data also reveal that the enrollment of Muslim boys in government PUCs has also decreased from 210 last year to about 95 now. So what did the colleges have to say about this?
So when we spoke to certain education experts, certain PU colleges, we found out that, generally boys prefer private PU colleges because of good infrastructure, because of good quality education, maybe even the proximity factor coming in. But another angle to it is also because certain parents didn't want the boys to be part of the agitation. They didn't want to divert their mind, lose their track, and get into the political side of things. Although they are in solidarity with the women, but they didn't want to be on the ground politicizing the issue and taking part in the protests. So the parents were a little concerned about the discipline and the future. So maybe that could be the reason for them to shift to the private PU colleges where it's little less controversial, little less politicized. I think that trend really surprised why boys actually shifted. That is one interesting thing.
And you mentioned in your story that this is happening at a time when the enrollment of Muslim students has been going up over the years. But can you talk about how the enrollment of Muslim students in Udupi, which was the epicenter of the hijab protests, compares with other regions in the state?
So in other districts, the number of Muslim girls enrollment, say in Shivamogga, has also decreased. It's been a 5-year low where, it's come down to 530 this year compared to previous years where it was above 530. Whereas in, say, Tumkur, Kodagu, Dakshin Kannada, Raichur, Koppala, Yadgir, Kalburgi, it's a 5-year high. The Muslim girls' numbers have increased. Chitradurga, Bangalore Rural, Bellary, Chikkodi, Vijaypur. So it's increased in other districts. That's what the numbers say. So there's been an increase in certain districts and there's been very few districts where it's a 5-year low. That's like Shivamogga. I think that's only Shivamogga where we have a 5-year low, and Chikbalapur for that matter. Chikbalapur is also a 5-year low where the Muslim girls' enrollment this year in government PU colleges have decreased.
And Sanath, after accessing this data, after speaking to administrators and students, what stands out for you in this story?
So what stands out is, the psychological behavior of these Muslim girls, because they feel that they're being targeted and they're being little isolated from their friends group and all, and the other non-Muslim friends. They feel they're being targeted and they feel a little isolated, and certain friends, they say, have backstabbed them. Although in front of the face, physically, when they see them, they are in support of them. But then they have seen WhatsApp posts where, they're like, Muslim girls should, hijab should be banned, and all sorts of anti-hijab slogans on their WhatsApp group. So they feel little cheated and betrayed by their own closed ones. So that is one. And networking and socializing is becoming a little difficult for these Muslim girls, because right now they're little cocooned in their own space, in their own community space. But when it comes to socializing much with other communities, they're finding it little hard after the hijab controversy.
And now, coming to Jammu and Kashmir. After 7 people were killed in the Upper Dangri village of Jammu and Kashmir last week, the villagers have demanded to be armed to take on the attackers. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. Since the mid-1990s, people in the villages of Jammu and Kashmir were provided arms to fight with the militants. The armed civilians were a part of the Village Defence Committees, or VDCs. The VDCs were disbanded later. But now, there is a fresh demand for the committees after multiple attacks in the recent past. Indian Express's Arun Sharma joins us in this segment to talk about this issue. So Arun, can you begin by telling us what a Village Defence Committee is?
Actually, village defense committees, they were a group of civilians living in a militancy prone area who volunteered to pick up gun for self-defense in case of attack by militants. They were a group of volunteers. They were not paid anything except government used to keep 1 or 2 SPOs in them because you can't straightway arm the locals, civilians. So SPO is the lowest rank in Jammu and Kashmir police. They created SPO, special police officer, and villagers were shown to be assisting the SPO. They were not paid anything except the SPO. SPO used to get 1,500 rupees per month.
And this idea, how did the idea to arm civilians come up initially?
Basically, arming civilians in Jammu and Kashmir is not new. It did not come first time in mid-90s. Basically, civilians were armed in border areas of Jammu during 1965 and 1971 Indo-Pak wars as well, because to check armed Pakistani guerrillas entering their area.
Right, so Arun, we see that civilians were armed again in 1995 when the Home Minister set up the VDCs in Kashmir. Can you tell us the reason behind this?
Militancy started in Kashmir in 1989. And by mid-90s, militants expanded their area of operation from Kashmir to Jammu division as well. But unlike Kashmir, which had only majority Muslim population, Jammu had a mix of Hindus and Muslims both. Both were living in harmony with each other at that time. But when militancy started, Hindus started migrating from hills to the plain areas, to the towns, nearby towns, to check people from migrating because Kashmiri Pandits had already migrated from Kashmir. Dogras of Jammu, they were also ready to leave their homes in far-off areas to avoid that situation. BJP also played a role. Though it was in opposition at that time, RSS also played a role. They moved in those areas and motivated people not to migrate. You pick up the gun. People agreed to pick up the gun in those areas because their population was significant in those areas. In some areas, they were 55-45 at most of the places. So, unlike Kashmiri Pandits, who were just 2% or 3% in Kashmir Valley, they were 40%. 45%, maybe 35%. So in areas where they were in majority, they picked up the gun.
Right. And now, can you tell us about their contribution in, fighting the militants?
Yes, I still remember when to cover a massacre somewhere in 1996 in Doda district. And at that time, the district SP there, he told me that they had only 110 or 115 policemen in a district in Doda district, which has a geographical area of more than 12,000 square kilometers. That was only in respect to Jammu and Kashmir police. At that time, only security forces were taking on the militants. They were in the forefront in fight against militants. And when village defense committees got formed, a situation came that much before the arrival of security forces or the police personnel, they had taken on the militants. They had made them escape. And a time came when militants dared not to attack villages which had VDCs. And in a process, they had a significant contribution in making their areas militancy free in districts like Doda, Kishtwar, Ramban, Rajouri, Poonch, or hills of Udhampur, hills of Riyasi.
Okay, so they had an impact in Jammu and Kashmir, but there were some controversies regarding the VDCs, right?
Yes. There were controversies also because one has to understand this basic fact. They are not like regular forces, like a regular army personnel or a paramilitary personnel or a regular policeman who are trained. They are civilians after holding the gun. Maybe there were isolated incidents, but that people used that gun for their own personal interest. Some of them are involved in criminal cases as well, like rape, like murder, and accordingly they were disarmed as well.
And that was the only reason why the VDCs were disbanded, or other factors like political opposition and so on also played a role.
Basically, there were no formal orders to disband VDCs. Basically, the demand first started in 2002 when PDP Congress coalition government came to power. And National Conference was in opposition. They started raking up the issue of VDCs because they wanted to put their arch political rivals in a tight spot. And government continuously denied that there was no plan to disarm VDCs. But on the other front, they started because no money was paid to VDCs. There was demand from VDC members after peace returned that we should also be paid. Why we hold night patrolling and this everything for free? And government also issued instructions that to take weapons from those who are becoming older, who turn 60. All these things, the number of VDC members has started decreasing on their own. Some people became inactive because they had no monetary benefits. Some people got disarmed because of their involvement in one or the other crime. And as a result, at many places, VDCs became defunct on their own. Because in a village which had 20 VDC members and suddenly a time comes when there is hardly one or two left, they are virtually of no use.
And now there is again a fresh demand for VDCs. Can you tell us why?
Yes, because suddenly after 2000, suddenly there has been spurt in movement of militants. From here and there, reports are coming about movement of militants, about suspicious movements. In one recent incident, which happened in January 1st, 5 people got killed by militants. 2 more got killed at the same place in an ID explosion next day. The total number, 7 people got killed in 2 days in a Rajouri village and 16 others injured. And this was the first ever attack in that village. And before that attack, security forces and police, they were already holding searches in those areas following reports that there have been suspicious movement. So villagers, they started demanding arms because they know that in mid-90s, when militancy was on the peak, their villages got saved by the VDCs.
Okay, and Arun, in March last year, the union minister approved setting up new VDCs, which they had renamed as Village Defense Guard. So now they're called VDG. So can you tell us how different the VDGs will be from VDCs?
No, so far as the composition is concerned, it will not be different. It will be the same composition comprising civilians holding weapons in self-defense against in case of attack by militants. And the only difference is that no, each of them will be paid. The person who will be leading the VDGs, he will be paid 4,500, and every member, village defense guard, will get 4,000 monthly remuneration. In earlier VDCs, only the SPOs used to get 1,500 rupees, and VDC members got nothing. And maybe there is also some talk going on that perhaps they may get some sophisticated weapons like SLR or something. That officially no one has confirmed it so far. But each of them like VDCs will get 303 and 100 bullets.
And is there any indication of when these VDGs will start working?
The process has already started. So far as Baljaral Potangri is concerned, they have started noting down the names of the people who want to pick up identifying the volunteers. In adjoining Baljarala village, where militants had killed over half a dozen people who had gathered during a marriage function, they have already handed over the weapons to the people. The process has already begun.
So, Arun, last time with the VDCs, different political parties raised concerns, like we discussed earlier. So, are people raising similar concerns against the VDGs as well right now?
Yes, there are parties like PDP. PDP has raised concern. CPIM, Mbai Tarigami, he has raised concern. They are not really opposing the arming of civilians, but they are raising the misuse of gun by VDC members in the past. Basically, that is the issue. But the question is, when PDP was in power, they did not disband the VDCs. The opposition to VDCs from politicians come only when they are in opposition. When they are in power, they need people to fight militants.
And in the end, we talk about medical students in Mumbai. In India, medicine is one of the most sought after fields. From parents to students, getting a good medical institution becomes their life's passion. But in this specific subset of the medical community in Maharashtra, many students are choosing to pay heavy monetary fines rather than do a compulsory medical service contracted by the government. According to a data sampling, in the biggest government medical college in the state, 2 out of 3 graduates chose to pay a rupees 10 lakh fine over compulsory rural posting. In this segment, Indian Express's Rupsa Chakraborty tells us the reason behind this choice. So, Rupsa, medical students in some places in Maharashtra are apparently choosing to pay a fine rather than do a compulsory rural visit. So, what is this rule regarding the rural services?
Okay, so as we know, there is an acute crisis of doctors in rural areas. So as per the direction of World Health Organization, WHO, per 1,000 patients, there should be one doctor. So it's 1:1,000 ratio for patient and doctor. But in rural, there is a huge gap. So years back, over a decade ago, the state government started this rule, which is also in other states also, where after the completion of the MBBS course, these doctors are stationed in different rural areas for 1 year, where they serve in primary health centers or in rural hospitals. This was aimed at bridging the gap of total number of doctors and the total number of patients, the requirement of doctors.
Okay, and were they successful in bridging this gap after introducing the compulsory service in rural areas?
So as we have highlighted in the story, it is about one hospital, JJ Hospital, which is the Grant Medical College of Mumbai. It is the biggest medical college in Maharashtra. As we have highlighted that almost over 60%, which is around 2 out of 3 doctors are opting out of these services. So they are not going to the rural areas. So recently we also conducted a 4-part series on Nandurbar, which is a tribal dominated area in Maharashtra, where we also highlighted how there is lack of doctors. There is so much demand of doctors. There are primary health centers, there are hospitals which are lying idle because they don't have doctors to treat the patient or to run the hospitals. So this clearly shows that how these MBBS doctors who could have helped to meet the demand of doctors and provided timely treatment to this patient, as they are not going, patients are not getting the benefit, which increases the life mortality and also delays their treatment.
Okay. So we need more doctors, and these MBBS students are newly trained doctors who can bridge this gap. But then can you tell us why so many students are opting out of it?
So there are mainly 2 reasons. One, lack of infrastructure. Of course, it is true that the primary health centers or rural hospitals don't have the adequate infrastructure. They have very basic medicines. And also in some centers, the bathrooms are not available. Even if there is a bathroom, there is no water supply. So for women doctors, they have to travel for kilometers to a bathroom to relieve themselves. So this is one reason. Another reason is that lack of security. As we have often seen that the doctors are assaulted by the kin of the patient. there must be some misunderstanding, or the families may think that the doctors are not treating properly. They start abusing or assaulting the doctors. And as they don't have the security personnel in comparison to the cities like Mumbai or Pune, the security is very lacking in these centers. So they avoid to go to these centers. Now, rural region. Now we can also say many of these MBBS doctors, after completing their degree, they join private hospitals. But this is completely incorrect. It's incorrect, or anticipation is completely wrong. Because when an MBBS doctor, after their degree, join a private hospital, they get around 40 to 50,000 maximum. Whereas when they go for the rural bond, after their MBBS, the government provides them around 60 to 70,000. Or even in tribal areas, in Naxalite areas, they are also given more than 70,000. So it's not because of the money that they are not going to these centers. It's mainly because of the security and the lack of infrastructure.
Right. And can you tell us what is the process for the students to get out of this compulsory rural posting?
So if after completing MBBS, if the doctor doesn't want to go for rural posting, they have to pay a penalty of 10 lakh rupees. Similarly, after postdoc, there is also a penalty, because after post-graduation also, they have to serve 1 year in rural posting. For that, it is 50 lakhs. Now, what the government, because of most of the doctors are opting out of the rural service, the government has decided that they will do away with the option of penalty. So, for the batch of 2022 and 23, they will not have any option that they can pay the penalty money and get out of it, because until either they serve the rural population or they give the penalty money, they will not get their MBBS degree.
Now, the authorities have decided that they will do away with the penalty system, and if now a student wants to opt out of the compulsory 1 year bond, they will not get their MBBS degree and essentially be putting up their studies and their future at risk. And the government is kind of hoping that this will be a more effective deterrent for the students to, get out of the rural service. But can the government force them to do this?
So they are the student of the government medical colleges, and they are studying on the fund given by the public. So of course government can always force them, but often these students, they opt out and they end up paying the money, because there is a thinking or perception among people that most of these students who study in government medical college are from poor background. But that's not the case. There are many students who come from affluent family, but as they're good students, they get through these medical colleges, and once their MBBS are done, their parents who can afford to pay 10 lakh rupees, they always say that we will give you the money. It's better to avoid rural posting, because they're also scared for the safety of their children. And often these children want to opt for or prepare for the post-graduation entrance, like NET PG. So their parents always support them financially.
Right. So now coming to the penalties, do you have any data about the penalties collected so far by the medical colleges?
So, from 2015 to 2021, a total of 1,364 students passed with MBBS degree from Grant Medical College, Mumbai, of which 897 opted out of the rural service. Among this, only 1/3 of the students who have paid the penalty, the government has collected around 27 crore in this 6 years from their MBBS students.
Okay, so that means a lot of students have not yet paid the fine. What will happen to them now?
So in such cases, now as the rule is still yet to be implemented, in the previous year batches, they have the option, or the government give them the option, that they can do their rural posting after their post-graduation if they successfully secure a post-graduation seat in their NET PG course in the first attempt. So once they secure a seat for their post-graduation course, then they can extend their rural posting after their post-graduation. But if they fail to secure a seat in their first attempt of the entrance exam, then they have to compulsory do the rural bond, or they have to pay the penalty. Otherwise, they will not get their MBBS certificate.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Anwiti Singh, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin with the help of Shashank, Bhargav and me. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.